Most men don't fear intimacy itself. What they fear is rejection, the exact moment when they finally lean in, open up, or make a move, and the woman suddenly pulls back, changes her energy, or goes cold. That moment doesn't just hurt the ego, it stays in the mind, creating hesitation, overthinking, and fear the next time a connection feels real. But here's the truth most men never hear. Women don't reject intimacy. They reject the emotional experience attached to it. If intimacy feels rushed, pressured, awkward, or unsafe, her body shuts it down automatically, even if attraction is there. But when intimacy feels calm, natural, and emotionally aligned, resistance disappears without effort. And that's where most men go wrong. They ask at the wrong time, with the wrong energy, and in a way that forces her into logic instead of emotion. Women don't decide intimacy logically. They decide it emotionally, through safety, trust, and anticipation. In this video, I'm going to break down 10 powerful psychological principles that show you how intimacy actually unfolds, without pressure, without desperation, and without facing cold rejection. This isn't manipulation. It's understanding how female psychology really works. Watch carefully, because once you understand this, you'll never approach intimacy the same way again. Now, let's begin. Trick 1. Never ask directly. Most men don't realize that rejection often begins the moment they ask for intimacy directly, because asking pulls a woman out of emotional flow and places her into logical decision-making before her feelings are ready to support that choice. When a man turns intimacy into a direct question, he unintentionally introduces pressure, and pressure activates doubt, hesitation, and self-protection, even if attraction, warmth, and chemistry were present just moments earlier. Women don't reject intimacy itself. They reject the emotional experience attached to how intimacy is brought into the moment, and direct requests often make that experience feel rushed, evaluated, or transactional instead of natural. Attraction does not live in logic, and desire does not grow through conscious analysis. It grows through emotion, safety, and flow. And when that flow is interrupted too early, resistance appears automatically. This is why so many men feel confused after rejection, because the attraction was real, but the method collapsed the emotional sequence before it was complete. An emotional invitation works differently because it does not force a decision or demand an answer. It allows intimacy to emerge from her internal state rather than from your expectation. When intimacy feels like something she is moving toward on her own, her nervous system stays relaxed, her sense of choice remains intact, and pressure disappears from the interaction. And when pressure disappears, rejection becomes rare, not because desire suddenly increased, but because the moment was finally allowed to unfold at the pace her emotions needed. Trick 2. The emotional layering principle. Most men misunderstand how attraction actually forms in women because they expect desire to appear instantly, the same way it often does for men, when in reality, female attraction builds gradually through emotional layering. For women, desire is not a switch that turns on suddenly. It is a process that develops through repeated emotional experiences such as comfort, safety, curiosity, and connection over time. This is why a woman can meet a man and feel nothing at first, yet after spending more time with him, sharing conversations, and feeling emotionally understood, she can suddenly feel deeply drawn to him without knowing exactly when it happened. Each interaction adds a layer to how she feels about you, and when those layers are allowed to build naturally, intimacy begins to feel stable instead of rushed. Most men fail because they try to skip these layers and jump straight to intimacy, and when emotional layers are missing, closeness feels unsafe or premature to her nervous system. Attraction grows in continuity, not urgency. And when you rush intimacy before emotional layers are formed, resistance appears even if interest exists. Emotional layering means allowing desire to develop through presence, consistency, and shared emotional moments rather than forcing progression through escalation. When a woman feels that each interaction with you adds comfort instead of pressure, Her trust deepens, her curiosity increases, and her attraction grows quietly but powerfully. Once emotional layers are built, intimacy no longer feels like a risk or a decision. It feels like a natural next step that flows from what already exists. Chart trick 3. The soft withdrawal effect. Most men lose momentum right when attraction starts to build, because the moment they feel closeness, they instinctively lean in harder, escalate faster, and try to secure intimacy before the moment naturally settles. This sudden increase in intensity creates pressure, and pressure quietly triggers resistance in a woman's nervous system, even if she was emotionally open just moments earlier. The soft withdrawal effect works because it removes pressure without removing interest, allowing attraction to breathe instead of collapsing under urgency. Instead of pushing forward when chemistry appears, you gently lean back emotionally and physically, not in a cold or distant way, but in a calm and confident way that shows you are comfortable with connection without needing to control it. This small shift immediately changes the dynamic, because when pressure disappears, a woman becomes aware of her own desire instead of reacting to yours. Most men fear pulling back because they think it signals disinterest, but in reality, soft withdrawal signals emotional security and self-control, which are deeply attractive traits. When you create a little space at the right moment, her curiosity increases, her guard lowers, and she often begins to lean in on her own. At that point, intimacy no longer feels like something you are pushing toward. It feels like something she is choosing to move into. This is why soft withdrawal reduces rejection so powerfully, because desire that is self-initiated does not need to be resisted. Trick 4. The implanted thought shift. Most men believe intimacy begins when they ask for it, but in reality, it begins much earlier, in the quiet moment when a woman starts feeling something before she consciously labels it. The implanted thought shift works because instead of asking her to decide, you help her become aware of emotions she is already experiencing without pushing her toward any outcome. When you ask directly, you force her to think about the future, expectations, and consequences. But when you gently describe the emotional present, you keep her grounded in how the moment actually feels. Women respond to feelings, not instructions, and many of those feelings exist beneath the surface long before they are spoken out loud. By calmly articulating comfort, ease, connection, or emotional chemistry, you are not introducing new ideas. You are giving language to sensations she has already been sensing. This creates alignment, because when a woman hears her own emotional experience reflected back accurately, she feels understood rather than pressured. Feeling understood builds trust, and trust allows attraction to deepen without effort. The key is that nothing is being asked for and nothing is being demanded, which keeps her sense of choice intact and removes resistance. Instead of feeling led or pushed, she feels like she is discovering her own feelings naturally. This is why the implanted thought shift works so smoothly, because intimacy becomes her curiosity rather than your request. And when intimacy grows from awareness instead of pressure, rejection fades, because nothing ever felt forced or premature. Trick 5. Masculine calm holds the frame. Many men don't realize that intimacy often depends less on what they say or do, and more on the emotional state they bring into the moment, because a woman's desire grows when she feels calm and safe rather than rushed or overwhelmed. Masculine calm is not emotional distance or silence. It is the grounded presence of a man who is comfortable with closeness and not anxious about where the moment needs to go. When a man remains calm, steady, and unhurried, he creates an emotional frame that allows a woman's nervous system to relax. And when she relaxes, her defenses naturally lower. Women are extremely sensitive to emotional energy, and they can feel when a man is tense, outcome focused, or seeking approval, even if his words sound confident on the surface. That hidden tension pushes her into overthinking and self-protection, which blocks desire instead of allowing it to flow. Masculine calm does the opposite because it signals emotional stability and self-control, qualities that make intimacy feel safe rather than risky. When you are not rushing, not over-explaining, and not trying to secure a result, she feels free to soften and stay present in the moment. This calm presence allows her to enter her feminine emotional state, where openness, warmth, and desire naturally live. Most men believe they need to do more to create intimacy, but often the most powerful thing is simply holding steady and letting the moment unfold. When a woman associates your presence with emotional ease instead of pressure, intimacy stops feeling like something she has to guard against and starts feeling like something she can move toward naturally. And when calm holds the frame, rejection becomes rare because nothing feels forced, unstable, or unsafe. Trick 6. Ask for a feeling, not a yes. The moment most men get rejected is not because intimacy was impossible, but because they asked the wrong question at the most sensitive point in the interaction, and that wrong question forced a woman to either accept or reject them instead of simply checking in with herself. When you ask a woman for a yes, you create a binary decision where only two outcomes exist, and one of those outcomes is rejection, which immediately activates fear, self-protection, and overthinking in her mind. Questions like asking whether she wants to come over, take things further, or be intimate push her into evaluating consequences, expectations, and future meanings, even if she was emotionally present just moments before. In those moments, she is no longer feeling the connection. She is managing risk. Asking for a feeling instead of a yes completely changes this dynamic because you are no longer asking her to approve or deny you, but inviting her to become aware of her own emotional state in the present moment. When you ask whether something feels too fast, whether she feels comfortable, or whether the moment feels right to her, you shift the focus away from outcome and toward emotional honesty. This removes pressure instantly because she no longer feels like her answer defines you, judges you, or commits her to anything beyond how she feels right now. Women feel safest when they are given emotional control without responsibility, and asking for a feeling gives her control while making it clear that nothing is expected from her response. If she says it feels a little fast, you haven't been rejected. You've been given clarity, and clarity allows connection to continue without tension. When you respond calmly and without disappointment, you communicate emotional maturity, stability, and respect, which often deepens trust instead of damaging it. Many men panic at this point and either pull away completely or try to convince her otherwise, but both reactions destroy safety and reinforce fear. The man who remains grounded and present shows that intimacy is not something he needs to secure to feel validated, and that independence is deeply reassuring to a woman's nervous system. By asking for feelings rather than permission, you allow intimacy to become a shared experience instead of a test she must pass or fail. This is why women often say yes later to the man who didn't pressure them earlier, because emotional safety compounds over time, and patience signals confidence. Asking for a feeling keeps intimacy inside emotional flow rather than pushing it into logical negotiation, and emotional flow is where desire naturally grows. Most men think rejection happens because they asked and got a no, but in reality, rejection often happens because the question itself created the resistance. When you learn to ask for feelings instead of answers, you remove the very mechanism that produces rejection in the first place. And once rejection is no longer the focus, intimacy stops being something you chase and becomes something that unfolds naturally, at its own pace, without force or fear. Trick 7. Mirror her desire perfectly. One of the most important truths about intimacy that almost no man understands is that a woman does not decide based on how much you want her, but on how accurately she feels emotionally met in the moment. And that sense of being met comes from mirroring, not chasing or withdrawing completely. Mirroring desire means responding to her emotional and physical energy at the same level she is expressing it, without amplifying it and without suppressing it, because imbalance in either direction creates discomfort. When a woman begins to lean closer, soften her tone, increase eye contact, laugh more freely, or initiate small touches, she is not inviting intensity or urgency. She is inviting alignment. Most men fail here because they either under-respond, which makes her feel exposed or foolish for showing interest, or they over-respond, which overwhelms her and turns her openness into pressure. Balanced mirroring communicates one powerful subconscious message: we are on the same wavelength. Human beings are biologically wired to feel safety and connection through mirroring from infancy, and when a woman feels her emotional signals being met calmly and accurately, her nervous system recognizes familiarity, understanding, and safety at a primal level. This is why mirroring feels natural and grounding rather than exciting in a chaotic way, because excitement without grounding feels unstable, while alignment feels trustworthy. Mirroring does not mean copying mechanically or exaggerating her behavior. It means matching her pace, her openness, and her level of vulnerability with presence and ease. If she touches your arm casually, you return that level of touch naturally rather than escalating it into something sexual. If she holds eye contact a little longer, you stay present with that gaze rather than breaking it nervously or turning it into a stare. Through mirroring, intimacy becomes a shared rhythm rather than a pursuit, and when rhythm is shared, no one feels pushed or pulled. A woman who feels mirrored does not wonder where she stands or what is expected of her, because the interaction feels emotionally synchronized rather than unpredictable. This synchronization removes anxiety, and anxiety is one of the biggest blockers of desire. Men who mirror well rarely feel the need to push intimacy forward because intimacy advances itself when both people feel emotionally aligned. The deeper reason mirroring works is that it confirms emotional understanding without words, and emotional understanding is the foundation of trust. When a woman feels that her signals are being received accurately and respectfully, she feels safe to offer more of herself, not because she is being convinced, but because she is being met. Most men think attraction grows through effort, but attraction deepens through resonance, and mirroring is how resonance is created in real time. Once you understand this, you stop trying to impress, escalate, or control the moment, and start allowing intimacy to grow through shared emotional movement. And when intimacy grows through mirroring rather than pressure, rejection disappears because no one feels ahead, behind, or out of sync. Trick 8: the emotional exit door. One of the deepest fears that silently blocks intimacy for many women is not the fear of desire itself, but the fear of losing control once they step into it, because intimacy feels dangerous when there is no clear way out, without guilt, judgment, or emotional consequences. Most men never realize that many women don't say no because they don't want closeness. They say no because they are afraid that once they say yes, they won't be able to slow down, change their mind, or step back without disappointing someone or being judged. The emotional exit door is the psychological signal that removes this fear entirely by making it clear, not through reassurance or insecurity, but through calm presence, that she is free at every stage of the interaction. When a woman knows at a nervous system level that she can pause, slow down, or stop at any moment without emotional backlash, her resistance softens, because freedom is what allows desire to feel safe. This is not about saying the right words to convince her. It is about embodying the truth that you are not attached to a specific outcome and that her comfort matters more than your expectations. The emotional exit door works because desire cannot exist where someone feels trapped, and nothing kills attraction faster than the sense of obligation. When you subtly communicate that there is no pressure, no expectation, and no rush, you remove the invisible tension that most men unknowingly bring into intimate moments. This does not mean over-explaining, apologizing, or repeatedly reassuring her, because that actually signals insecurity and neediness, which creates more pressure rather than less. True emotional freedom is communicated through tone, pacing, and energy, not through excessive words. When you remain calm, unreactive, and grounded regardless of where the moment goes, she feels that her choices will be respected, and respect is one of the strongest foundations of trust. As soon as the exit door becomes visible, her mind no longer focuses on protecting herself from future discomfort, and instead becomes present with how she feels right now. This shift from future fear to present feeling is where desire naturally begins to surface. Many men believe that giving too much freedom will make a woman lose interest, but the opposite is true, because freedom creates safety, and safety allows desire to emerge without force. A woman opens emotionally fastest to the man who makes it clear, through his calm behavior, that she never has to trade her autonomy for closeness. When she knows she can leave at any moment without emotional cost, staying becomes a choice, not a risk. This is why intimacy often deepens right after a man removes pressure rather than increases it, because the removal of fear allows attraction to breathe. The emotional exit door does not push intimacy away, it makes intimacy feel safe enough to approach. Men who understand this principle stop trying to secure intimacy and start creating emotional environments where intimacy feels optional, and what is optional is far more desirable than what feels expected. Once a woman feels free with you, she does not experience closeness as something that could trap her. She experiences it as something she can enjoy fully, knowing that her boundaries will be honored at every step. And when intimacy feels free instead of binding, rejection fades, not because desire was forced, but because fear was removed. Trick 9. Slow down at the peak. Long form. Deep psychology. Narrative flow. One of the most common mistakes men make happens right at the moment when attraction is strongest, because instead of trusting the intensity of the moment, they rush to lock it in, and that rush quietly destroys what was about to happen naturally. When emotional or physical tension reaches a peak, most men believe they need to act immediately, escalate quickly, or secure intimacy before the moment fades. But this urgency sends a subtle signal of insecurity to a woman's nervous system. Desire does not disappear when you slow down. It disappears when it feels chased. At the peak of attraction, a woman is already emotionally engaged, already curious, already open, and what she needs most at that point is not speed, but stability. Slowing down at the peak allows the emotional intensity to deepen instead of collapse, because desire grows when it is stretched, not when it is rushed to conclusion. When you pause instead of pushing forward, you allow anticipation to build. And anticipation is one of the most powerful amplifiers of female desire. This pause communicates confidence, emotional control, and trust in the moment, because a man who is not afraid of silence or stillness is a man who is not afraid of losing the connection. Women feel safest when they sense that a man is comfortable letting desire exist without immediately trying to consume it. In these moments, slowing down can look like taking a breath, softening your movements, maintaining eye contact without escalating, or simply staying present instead of trying to decide what comes next. These subtle pauses allow her emotions to catch up with the intensity of the moment, and when emotions catch up, intimacy stops feeling risky and starts feeling grounded. Many men fear that if they slow down, the spark will fade, but in reality, the spark fades when pressure interrupts emotional flow. Slowing down keeps intimacy inside the body rather than pushing it into the mind, and desire lives in the body, not in overthinking. When a woman feels that you are not trying to rush her through her own emotions, she relaxes further into the experience, and relaxation allows desire to expand. This is why moments of stillness often feel more intimate than moments of action, because stillness gives space for emotion to deepen. Men who understand this principle stop trying to capture moments and start allowing moments to unfold fully, trusting that if desire is real, it does not need to be chased. By slowing down at the peak, you transform intensity into depth, urgency into calm attraction, and fleeting chemistry into lasting emotional connection. And when intimacy grows from depth rather than speed, rejection becomes rare, because nothing feels forced, premature, or overwhelming. Trick 10. Make the moment the leader. The final shift that removes desperation, awkwardness, and rejection entirely is understanding that intimacy does not deepen because someone asks for it, pushes for it, or even wants it more, but because the moment itself becomes emotionally strong enough to lead both people forward naturally. Most men place themselves at the center of the interaction by making intimacy about what they want, what they feel, or what they are hoping will happen next, and without realizing it, this creates pressure because the focus stays on their desire instead of the shared experience. When you make the moment the leader, you remove yourself as the agent pushing things forward and allow the emotional reality between you to take control, which feels far more natural and comfortable to a woman. Instead of asking where things are going or trying to define what should happen next, you simply acknowledge what already exists, because acknowledgement keeps intimacy grounded in the present rather than pulling it into future expectations. When you calmly notice how natural, comfortable, or connected the moment feels, you are not requesting intimacy. You are naming the emotional truth of what is happening right now. This subtle shift is powerful because women follow emotion more easily than they follow requests, and emotion always lives in the present moment. By letting the moment lead, you remove the sense that intimacy is something being initiated by you and replace it with the feeling that intimacy is something both of you are already experiencing together. This creates a shared emotional space rather than a directional push, and shared space feels safe, mutual, and real. When a woman feels that intimacy is emerging from the moment itself rather than from your expectations, she does not feel evaluated, rushed, or cornered. She feels included in an experience that is unfolding naturally. Moments carry emotional authority, and when you respect that authority instead of trying to override it, intimacy becomes effortless. This is why women often describe intimate experiences that felt right as moments that just happened, because no one forced them, defined them, or rushed them into existence. Men who understand this principle stop trying to close moments and start allowing moments to deepen, trusting that if connection is real, it does not need to be controlled. When you follow the moment instead of leading with desire, intimacy feels organic rather than planned, emotional rather than logical, and mutual rather than one-sided. This final principle ties everything together, because once pressure is removed, emotional safety is present, desire is mirrored, freedom is felt, and timing is respected. The moment itself naturally carries intimacy forward. And when intimacy is led by the moment, rejection disappears, not because you avoided risk, but because nothing ever felt forced enough to resist. This is the difference between asking for intimacy and allowing intimacy to happen. And once you understand that difference, the way you experience connection, attraction, and closeness changes permanently. If there is one thing this video should leave you with, it's the understanding that intimacy was never about saying the right words at the right time, but about creating the emotional conditions where closeness feels safe, natural, and voluntary. Most rejection doesn't happen because attraction is missing. It happens because moments are rushed, pressured, or misunderstood before emotions are ready to support them. When you stop forcing outcomes and start respecting emotional flow, timing, and safety, intimacy stops feeling stressful and starts feeling like a shared experience instead of a risk. None of the principles you learned here are about manipulation or pretending to be someone else. They are about awareness, patience, and emotional intelligence. A man who understands these dynamics doesn't chase intimacy or fear rejection because he knows that when emotional conditions are right, connection happens on its own. If this video helped you see intimacy differently and gave you clarity instead of confusion, support the channel by liking the video and subscribing for more real psychology and honest insight. Take your time, explore the other videos here, and I'll see you in the next one.